everyone. It's so nice to see you this morning. I'm Jeannie. I'm one of the product designers. I actually work directly on Behance. So this is my first time hosting a live stream from my house. So you can kind of see my little, I didn't have a real green screen, so had to compensate. And hi everyone in the chat. No zombie baby today, Tim. As some of you might remember, that is one of the Adobe Live team's favorite things to troll me with, which is a zombie baby from our offices. And thankfully for me, that zombie baby prop is trapped in the Adobe offices where it cannot get to me. It was one of my largest requests that I would be promised I wouldn't be trolled today. Hi Lindsay, hi Andreas, hi Bun. If you're in the chat, let me know where you're watching from. I know it's pretty early today. I'm streaming from New York, so it's 10:30. And I'd love to know where you're kind of streaming in from. And so, hi Steve, Marina, this is awesome. I'm so excited to be here today that I've never really worked in Photoshop for images up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I was always doing it actually for UI work, and there was a time period where Photoshop was big for doing making computer interfaces. But I think now that we have other programs like XD or Figma or Sketch that exist to help make user interfaces, it's kind of fun to go back into Photoshop and see what we can make out of with images. And so one of the things I actually wanted to do today was I wanted to talk a little bit about what we were going to do for the rest of the day. We have a full schedule packed, and we're really excited to see what people will do through the course of the day. There it is. There's our schedule for the day. So that's me, Image Masking 101. And at 9, we have Paul Tranny, who also did amazing augmented reality stuff yesterday. If you're really interested in that, I highly recommend checking out yesterday's 101 for AR. And you can see another call out that I really particularly love is a draw along with Kyle Webster. That's something that I've been watching pretty regularly as I've been at home and just kind of trying to see what I can do and expand what I am kind of learning about in different mediums, because I'm not skilled in every medium. Drawing is definitely something I'd love to learn more about. So I think Kyle is just fantastic for that. Anyway, without further ado, we'll talk a little bit about today's image masking. So for those of you who don't know what image masking is, it's the ability for you to separate an object from the background. And this is really common in a variety of places where we're seeing that there might be a product shot that you want to show people, or you want to show them, an elephant, just isolated from the background for easy understanding, for example. And instead of trying to identify specific elements of an image, you can look at one really clearly cut out image. And I think image masking is highly misunderstood because a lot of people think it's really tedious and it's boring or it's difficult. And so they actually image masking is a big thing that people go out and ask others to do for them. So you can go on Fiverr and ask, or Upwork, and ask people to mask out 10 or 20 images for you at a time. But with Photoshop, I think it's actually amazing. It's a really great, simple skill for everyone to master. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing is, let's see if I can show you this. I've been enjoying practicing this specifically on artwork. And so I've noticed that a lot of the museums now are open access. They have this idea that they can scan artwork, and I can actually drop this link into the chat. But they take this artwork and they scan it at a high resolution, and it's open to the public domain. So anything that you see here that says public domain means that you can kind of click in and look at it, which is really amazing. You can go really close. Look at the level of detail that you're looking at this image. I mean, it's a painting. It's a real scan of a painting. So everything from the painting's textures to the kind of light and shadow play that's in the background, I think it's just really phenomenal. And it always adds that extra level of it being understanding the depth to which artists had to work before. Anyway, I love this stuff, so highly recommend for you to check it out. And what's really great is that you'll see a little download link on the bottom right when you click into these open access images. So from the Met, you can always download it here and then hit download. And then when you download this, it'll actually prompt you. You can save this image. You can click in to see it at full resolution, and you can save the image. So in this case, we'll go ahead and save this image on my desktop. And I think this is great that museums are offering this. One, because it's the kind of detail that you get to see in paintings that you haven't been able to see before. If you've ever seen that really famous shot of the Mona Lisa, people were essentially just, it's like a wall of people, and you can't actually walk up to the Mona Lisa. And when you actually do walk up, the Mona Lisa is like the size, like pretty small, like the size of a sheet of paper. And you can't really spend too much time there. And I think that's such a tragedy that there's so much art out there that you can't really get to, you don't have the opportunity to get close to. But in this case, now that museums are offering open access, you can actually get really close and personal to it, and try testing out different things, right? I think there's a paralysis that people feel when they feel like they have to test out everything in Photoshop on their own work, like perfectly original work. And this is not what that's about. It's about learning a new skill, right? We're not pretending that we painted the painting, but we are using it as the initial canvas for us to be able to learn and to grow different skills in Photoshop. Anyway, that's my little thing. So I've gone ahead and the medium I typically work with is flowers. A lot of times I like to show people what they can do with floral paintings. So I've gone ahead and I've downloaded 2 or 3 of these open access public domain images. This one is a particular favorite because he was living in New York in the 1800s, and I don't know, just weren't a lot of floral painters back then in the 1800s. So let's go ahead and switch to Photoshop. And in Photoshop, we can kind of take a look at at the painting more in detail, and we'll talk a little bit about 3 ways for us to learn how to mask objects from an image. So again, when we were masking, let's see if we can pull this up. I'll show you with a brand new layer that will fill with white. Okay, so when we're masking objects, we essentially want to isolate it perfectly from the background. So here's a good example of that. Here's an example of a flower that I've gone ahead and masked before from a different painting. And you can kind of see that it's got nice crisp edges. If I were to try to move this object around, I could. It's completely isolated from the background. So if I change the background color, let's say to make it yellow, it doesn't change the actual image, and I can see all the edges are pretty crisp here. So that's kind of what I want to do. I want to be able to take an image, any image, and say, hey, I just want to isolate the focal point or a specific part of this image from the other parts. So that's a good example of what that would look like there. So here is the painting by, let's see, what was his name? Severin Rosen. And so we're going to take and isolate specific parts of this painting. I can also take this. Hi, Marcia. Hi, Steve. Toronto, Canada. That's awesome. Oh, I said we. We'll be starting with this painting today. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take this painting and isolate a specific part of it. Any takers on which flower I should start with? Let me zoom out a little bit. There's a lot going on. And we should pick something that's a little bright and nicely contrasted from the background for this. So maybe, let's see, we'll start with the orange tulip on the left here. So this one over here. And if you guys want me to mask a different one, you should just shout it out in the chat. I'm always looking at the chat to see what people are saying. Okay, so we'll start with the simplest way to mask something, okay? And the simplest way is to really take the marquee tool, or where you see the little ants, the dotted line, and you could just take this and highlight any section of an image. So here I'm going to just circle the tulip, and you could right click, layer via copy. So what layer via copy does is essentially says, okay, that section that you selected with the marquee tool, I'm going to go ahead and copy that into a different layer in Photoshop. So you can see here that it's isolated from the background. Here's a background, and then here is our little masked out circle. So that is technically the simplest way to execute a mask. Obviously, there's still parts of the background in it, but it's really handy if you're saying, hey, I don't really need the edges to be nicely done. I just want the flower in a circle. Boom, done. So we'll call this layer tulip in a circle. And I think one step away from that is to go ahead and use this magic wand tool. So we're saying, hey, that's awesome. I learned how to take this section of a painting in a circle. Not that exciting. But what the magic wand does is it allows you to select specific areas. And, in the background, the software is kind of thinking, okay, she selected orange, or like this dark orange. Can I add which parts of this are connected to that orange that are also orange that I should take? So you can kind of see if I click different parts of it, the software is thinking about which sections to take. And what's great is you can actually drag tulip, or you can click it, and I'm holding down shift. So I think that's always important to note, is that I'm actually holding shift down as I'm doing this, so that as I'm clicking, I'm adding more and more stuff to it. Come on, pick it up, pick it up. One of the feedback I always get during my live streams is that people say that they can hear my mouse. They can hear my clickingness because I have a mechanical mouse that is quite loud when I click. But at least you know when I'm clicking. All right. It's not perfect, but it'll do. So with Magic Wand, I'm kind of selecting the aspects, the parts of this that I need. And I can say, by clicking the M for marquee tool. So this is important, is first I'm in Magic Wand, I select the sections I want, then I go to the marquee tool with the shortcut M, and I hit right click, and I could layer via copy. And this does the same exact thing. Layer via copy, done. And obviously this is a little fuzzy here because I'm not selecting it super cleanly. I didn't spend a lot of time, but it was great for just a quick selection. Magic Wand tool is great for this. Quick selection tool will also do a great job with this. So if we switch over here, on the left, you'll see under Wand, there's Quick Selection Tool and Magic Wand. I see in the chat that we're having a lot of lag situations here. And I feel like it might be YouTube. I really hope it's not. I see the lag a little bit on my end. All right, hopefully that will help it a little bit. Seeing if switching Switching some stuff around in the background will help. All right, so with quick selection tool, I actually prefer this over magic wand. I like to select the background, making sure that you're selecting the actual layer you want to work with on the right, and then taking the quick selection tool, dragging your mouse over the parts that are distinct. So in this case, I'm dragging it over all of the orange bits. I just literally, without touching anything else, just dragging the mouse over. So let's try that one more time. We'll deselect, just drag the mouse over. And Photoshop is honestly amazing because it just takes all those chunks that I already have, and then I could do the same thing, layer via copy. So we'll take a look here. Awesome. So there it is, the tulip is isolated. One of the things I think we often notice once people have mastered quick selection tool is they'll say, hey, I really hate how the edges are crunchy. That's not what you promised me before, right? Like originally when I showed you a masked flower, let me show you a different one. Look at how clean these edges are. That's what people kind of expect from a masked image that you could reuse in a website or, on some sort of collage that you're making. And so they're like, this orange flower, that's not it. And I think the key here is to recognize that we have to use an additional way beyond layer via copy. Layer via copy is the most simplistic way to take a section of a layer and move it to a different layer. So I'll show you my favorite thing, we did the same thing. We did quick selection, we dragged over the tulip, we right click, and instead of hitting layer via copy, we're actually going to hit select and mask. And so this was something fairly new. What it gives us is this properties panel on the right. I'm going to move my face here so you can see it. Ooh, there I am shifting across the screen. Okay, so this properties panel on the right allows us to see what we're doing and to change different things about how we're masking. And so this is Photoshop's proprietary way of allowing people to mask easily and quickly. So you'll see here that I can see the rest of my image is under like a haze. And that's something that's on purpose here because you can see that the view is on black. We can actually change these, so we'll do onion skin. Onion skin is this gray and white checkerboard that we expect to see when we see something transparent in Photoshop. So you can, if you select onion skin, you can kind of see what the final mask will look like. And this is already pretty good. Just in case if I wanted to bring back the rest of the painting, I can change this transparency. So I could change it to, let's say, 50%. And then I'll know if I want to add other chunks of the painting into my masked image. Here for smooth, this is one of my favorite things because originally you can kind of see how crunchy it is. If you turn smooth down to 0, you see the original way that selection and masking would have looked if you had just quick selected and masked kind of without using this select and mask tool. I like taking it and moving it up a little bit. Feathering the edge, I don't use as much because what this does, it kind of starts to degrade. It's actually kind of cool to look at. It starts to degrade the edge completely. So for something like a painting, I probably will leave the feather at 0%. And then here, shift edge also allows you, it does the same thing, but in reverse. So feather cuts pixels from the outside in. Shift edge allows us to increase pixels from the inside out. So you can kind of see this here. And that's great if you're looking for a little bit more of the border. Let's say the image has a dark edge around the sides and you want to capture that and quick select didn't do that. That's where shift edge is really great for. Picking up that little slight brush strokes on the side. So here, I think we'll allow it to smooth just a little bit. And you'll also notice this last slider called contrast. What contrast does is it essentially says, hey, the pixels you've selected, can I pick them out in high contrast from the background? So here, the higher the contrast, the less fuzzy the edges will be. Versus over here, if you bring down the contrast to 0, you'll see it's quite kind of off and transparent on the edges. This particular properties panel is really useful because everything that you're doing, it's not permanent. We haven't done anything permanent yet. We're still in just a select and mask tool view versus the actual, we haven't committed to doing anything. So it's really useful to be able to mess around with the sliders at this point, feather here, just to kind of see what you can do. And then very importantly at the bottom where it says output settings, I like to set this output to new layer with a layer mask. So we'll talk about these, right? So selection just implies that whatever you had selected when you did the quick selection tool, that's what this would apply to. But we don't want that. We want specifically a new layer and then a layer mask. And what this means is that we can go back and edit these image mask properties that we had selected. Again, if we do new layer with layer mask. I also do remember settings. I like that. Just in case as I'm working through the document later, it'll continue to remember this setting so that I'm kind of a little bit more consistent. I'm not tampering with the setting every time as I mask different parts of the flowers. So hit OK. And here we have it. So let's look at what we have so far. We have the original background. We have a background with a layer mask. So you can see this layer mask. If I wanted to change other parts of this layer mask, I could paint parts of the mask in and out. I think that's always really interesting. Or I can change it. I could delete, for example, I could delete this layer mask and it would just revert to a copy of the layers. We'll undo one more time. So this we can call orange tulip mask. This version was just when we used the quick selection tool plus layer via copy. And then that was the rose I'd done originally. That's tulip in a circle. And this is magic wand plus layer via copy. Just like labeling these sometimes. So Marsha asked, does it remember a setting in a new Photoshop file? And it does. That is a great question. So if we go ahead, let's try that actually. So there's two ways it can do this. So one is we can actually go ahead and export a layer mask to a new Photoshop file, and then we'll see that it remembers it from there. And another is we'll save it and open a new Photoshop file and see what it does. So we did the same thing we did as I said before. So let me undo this. I go to quick selection. I select the parts of the flower I really like. I right click. I'm going to hit select and mask. And because it retained all of these edge detections and settings, these sliders that I had before because of my remember settings, I'm going to go ahead and output to a new document with layer mask. And boom, there it is in a brand new document. And in the same way, let's say if we opened up a file, we'll open up a different file from the Met. We can actually go ahead and do the same thing. So we'll take, let's say, this pink rose, right click, select and mask, and there it has 15079. Let's see if that is the same from before. $15,079. Yep. So it remembers the setting across different Photoshop files, which is super great if you're looking for that very consistent edge as you're working through it. We'll undo this. Undo. No. Maybe I'll just delete this layer mask. There we go. And then we'll remove. Okay, so back to our image here. Let's select and mask a bunch of these and make a new layer with a layer mask. And we'll call this yellow tulip. And so one key thing that we are kind of looking at is to make sure that, I always forget this, is to go back to the original layer that I have set. A lot of people will be like on a specific layer. Let's say they'll be on this tulip layer and they have it selected and they're trying to mask something and they're like, nothing's working. Photoshop's broken. And it's not. It's really just, it's hard to remember what you have selected. So the first thing I always look at is what layer am I on in the actual Photoshop document? And then you go back in and you try to actually execute the image masking from there. Alexandra says, I like how her expression says, you're just not going to buy the plant, are you? And I totally agree. I love this painting because it's just so sassy. I mean, her expression is really wonderful. And she's also just carrying so much. There's such a crazy variety here that I don't think is necessarily naturally possible, which is great. That's what's great about paintings. It's about fantasy. This one's so good. It's a really good painting. Andrea, thanks for joining us. I am also glad that it is recorded so that everyone can come back and take a look. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna mask out a few more things very quickly. And you'll kind of see how quick and easy it is to do this after you've mastered it a few times. You don't have to spend a ton of time, pink daisy, playing with the settings. Here, just go ahead, select it, select and mask. Everything looks good here. I don't want to change any of it. Pink rose, go back, select my layer. Okay, so here's a good example of what happens sometimes with the quick selection tool. The quick selection tool doesn't always select perfectly. So I've kind of purposefully chosen this painting because I really wanted to see something that had a high contrast from the background, right? So all of these flowers, they're bright, they're colorful, they're relatively light colored compared to the background. And you'll notice that I've also only selected to mask flowers that are more, I guess, like where the contrast is really high. Like I didn't choose very dark colored flowers to mask. I'm only choosing the really bright ones. And so what I see here is that it's selected this edge. And I don't really know why quick selection tool has decided to do that, but that's okay. We'll go back and select and mask anyway. And what I like to do is I actually like to take this minus up here. So if you look at the top left, it gives me a tool to allow me to plus and minus. And so plus means that I can select different parts of this to continue masking. So I've just gone ahead and drawn some dots there, and select and mask is very confused, and it's trying to smartly decide, hey, what else do you want me to take from this background? But instead, if we do minus, we can actually go ahead and with a few clicks take out this black edge that I didn't intend on selecting, and quick selection for some reason had decided that for me that it was going to do it. So here I can also adjust the sliders again just to make sure that it's what I want. Great. We'll hit OK again, and we'll call this marigold. One more time. Turn on the background of my original image. So let's pick something a little bit darker where the contrast isn't as high. And you can kind of see where this might be more of an issue. So we'll go ahead and select this purple iris here. Brown is like a dark mustardy brown, and then the outside is, let's see. The outside is more of the the purple, but the purple is kind of murky. And you can kind of see that quick selection is really struggling to define which parts of this are the iris and which parts of this are the background. So I think it's done an okay job. It's trying so hard. You can kind of see when I try to select this part of the petal, it'll just take the entire chunk of background between the two stems, right? So we'll go ahead and right click and select and mask, knowing that it hasn't done top left portion. We have this little slider. We're gonna hit minus because we're gonna try to take away parts of this that we don't want. And with, I was gonna say with a single click, it didn't work. Maybe we'll take a smaller brush and see if we can do that. So I think it's really struggling with this edge. Do you see that? When I click, just by clicking once, so I click it, quick selection and the select and mask is really stressed out. It's trying to say, hey, I don't really know where the edge of this is. So I'm just gonna start taking out random chunks of this. Like there's part of a stem here. You can see that the edge of this is kind of grainy. It's just really mad about the whole thing. So we'll let it be angry and we'll do a new layer with layer mask. That's okay. We'll call this our murky iris. And then what I like to do is I like to paint in the sections that I like in my in the edges. Instead of trying to say, hey, select and mask, do all the work for me, I'm gonna help it along a little bit. And Alex is totally right. It's struggling because the colors are too similar and I can't distinguish between the two. It's absolutely true. That is where, you know, we see quick selection kind of having a fit. So instead what we're gonna do is, if you look at these masks on the right, each layer of these is created into a layer mask. What it has done is it says, hey, everything that you want me to show it in white, and everything you don't want me to show, cover it in black. And you'll see this principle if you just go ahead and take a paintbrush. So we'll take a nice plain paintbrush here, and we'll make it medium fluffy. And we'll make sure that we've selected white. So in my color picker, the color I've selected is white. If I were to try to paint inside of this, having selected this layer mask on the right, if I paint in white, it'll show me parts of the image. Kathleen says, I love imagining that select and mask is just a grumpy IT person. It's so true. I just imagine the program being like, I don't know what you want from me. The purples and browns, they're exactly the same. I don't know what you want. And I just have to be like, please, can you help me? So that's how masking, if I wanted to paint in part of the mask, I could do it with colors and paint brushes, which is kind of exciting. So we'll go ahead and make it like kind of a soft edge, and we'll make the brush size a little smaller. And we'll go ahead and actually switch it from white to black, and we'll paint away the parts that we don't want. So this stem, for example, I know I don't want it. I'm just gonna click it and paint away. It's like magic. So if it was a little too fuzzy, I can actually increase the edge of it so that's not so soft, and I can softly paint this away. And you can hear my mechanical mouse clicking here. And it's really because I don't work with a stylus. I don't have like a Wacom stylus. I just use everything with a mechanical mouse, which, I don't know. It's a preference thing, I guess. Gonna have a little more coffee to help my masking skills. And then we'll go ahead and paint away some more edges that I don't want. And we'll switch to white and paint in the edges I do want. You can kind of see here that we're getting to the really chunky pixel sizes here, that it's almost like my edge, I should have done 100% hardness. So we'll go ahead and undo. We'll switch my paintbrush to 100% hardness and paint it in. There's our iris. Let's see it again. We can actually take this background. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll duplicate the background and hide the first one, and take the second one and change the opacity. So you can kind of see what I was painting in and where I could be maybe changing it or modifying it. Yvonne says, I always thought I had to use the eraser when I used the masks. Yep, I think eraser is one way to do it. I think thinking about painting it with black and white is a alternate way of thinking about erasing and painting things in. So it's just a different paradigm. Black means taking it away and white means painting it back in. You just have to kind of imagine that you're painting in a screen over an image. That's how I think about it. So here we'll do it again. Do you see this little triangle here in the iris? It's definitely not, it shouldn't be there. Or it's not that it shouldn't be there, but it's part of the background, and I didn't want the background in there. So I'll go ahead and I'll do the same thing. I'll make a small pixel size for my brush, and I will paint in with black the parts I don't want. Getting real close and personal with this painting. It's not so bad. This painting's kind of nice. And Kathleen says, unless I'm actually painting, I prefer a mouse too. And I agree. I think it's just, I've gotten used to it. I realize that if you're really used to having a stylus, that just becomes your tool of choice. Like, you think in that way. And so, oh, I think I just, oops. Okay, that does happen. I just painted on the actual image instead of painting in the mask. So I'm gonna have to undo that. Which is that I need to actually select, here you can see the little white box, bounding boxes that are like little L's. They're selecting the actual painting, and I need it to select the actual mask. So I'm gonna right click, or I'm gonna click on that mask before painting it in. At least I figured it out early before committing too far. Sometimes I do a lot of work and then I realize I've selected the wrong mask, and it's so upsetting. It's, oh yeah. Paul used to say that, Paul says, I make that mistake all the time. You end up painting on the image instead of the mask. And it's so true. And sometimes you do it for a long time. You do it way past the point where the undo mechanism will remember what you've done, and you're just like, oh God. All right, carefully painting in this gap between the iris petals again. Doing a lot of undos here too. Whenever I paint in the mask, I need it to be, often do a lot of undos because I'm just not very steady with the mouse, to be honest. Okay, I think that's an acceptable level. Oh yeah, an Adobe Live bingo card. Painting on the wrong layer is completely a square, or selecting the wrong layer. And Vanessa says, isn't masking a more non-destructive way of work compared to simply erasing? Yes, absolutely. It's non-destructive because you could always go back and paint in the black and white versus needing to completely rely on not erasing the wrong parts, which is great. If I wanted to bring this back, I could just paint it back in at any point. Okay. So we have all these objects here. Let's zoom out a little bit and look at it. Look at what we've done. We have our tulip, another tulip, daisy, rose, marigold, iris. Let's see if we could, I'll call this my transparent background. I'm actually not that great about naming my layers, and it always comes to bite me in the butt later. I always say, oh, I'm gonna remember what this layer does. And then inevitably, I will go back in and completely forget the next time I open my document. So I'm gonna go back and let's see. Alexander says, we can adjust the number of undos that Photoshop remembers by going into settings. That is correct. That is something I actually only learned recently. This was not natural to me. Angelique says, why do you use this technique to mask a flower? Doesn't it take much time? I think I'm only painting it in and out if it's a section that is difficult to mask. So otherwise, you could definitely just use quick selection. So we'll just, for example, select out this chunk of rose. And yeah, I like that leaf too, why not? And right click, select and mask. Great. And then there are definitely chunks of this that I probably don't need. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on the mask and do what we did before. We're gonna paint with brush, a nice brush, and paint away the parts we don't want in black. Another thing we could do is we could maybe select parts, like let's say we selected this, and then take a brush and paint in the parts we don't want. And that one's kind of a little sloppy, let's be honest. That edge of that leaf is not great. Okay. Let's see here. So a lot of people are like, great, you've masked a ton of flowers on a painting you didn't paint. Good job. What can you do with this? And I think one of the things that I find useful is, let's say we were to turn off all of these layers. We're going to take just one layer. You can actually go ahead and trim the image down with transparent pixels, just down, right down to what the actual image, the mask is, and export this as a PNG. And that PNG becomes really useful to be used in other places. So we'll go ahead and we'll just export, quick export as PNG. We'll take it and we'll call it orange tulip. Then I undo everything because I want to make sure that after I've trimmed the file size, all the transparent pixels away, I want to undo it and make sure that I didn't just save it like that, because I still have all these other images that I have yet to mask. I mean, I've already masked, but I have yet to trim down. So let's go ahead and we'll trim down this transparent pixel and call it yellow tulip. Okay, so that's one thing you could do, which is that you could go ahead and make sure now you have a bunch of PNGs that exist for you to be able to access, that you could use in other places. I really liked what Kathleen said, which is that we could maybe make a digital collage with this. That's actually really fascinating because these paintings were originally the first collages of their time. And when I say collages, I don't mean that they actually chopped up other parts of painting. They wouldn't have considered that they didn't consider that kind of like chop and paste a art form back then. Like mixed media collage would be something we would talk about now. But what they did do was that they painted stuff willy-nilly, out of season, all the time. And this is because these still life paintings, they're often like, they're not just pretty fruit and flowers, they actually represent different things. And so people spoke in the language of flowers all the time. And they were really, each flower type had a really specific name or meaning to it, and they would try to communicate usually something about the futility of life or the bounty of harvest. And so you can actually kind of see that here. So what we have here there's a peony on the top. Let me see if I can select it. You have a peony on the top left. You have plums down here. You have a bird's nest and a pineapple. And a lot of stone fruit down here. And if you know anything about fruits and flowers, you know that without globalization, this painting could never exist in real life in the 1800s. The peonies are a May thing. So right now, if you're in New York City, peonies are really in season. Any amount of stone fruit like plums or apricots or peaches would have been later on in the summer. Irises are April, May. Some of these tulips would have been earlier in April. And so I think it's like really interesting because they were doing a form of collage. By painting it, they would take different images and reference them and paint it like composite them in one painting, their references to kind of talk about something. So we can actually do that. We can take chunks of this. So let's take all of our pieces and we can make our own type of painting with this. We can make a collage that represents something that we are interested in. For example, I can take each of these layers and I can make new digital representations of what it means to have these images exist side by side. So for example, here is a stack of roses sprouting out of the edge of an iris. We can take this marigold and do the same. We'll take this baby daisy. I'll zoom in a little bit in a second so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm taking and manipulating each of the masks that I had from before and kind of compositing them into a weird new digital collage. And I loved kind of doing this and seeing what comes out, right? It's like painting with an existing painting. Alexandra says the Japanese have flower arrangement culture as far as I remember, and that is absolutely true. Ikebana is huge even now. It's really exciting actually for us to consider what we can do with, especially with globalized flowers. Ikebana and also just generally flower arranging is just totally different now because we can have lots of things sitting side by side that we otherwise wouldn't have. Okay, so let's say we had masked a bunch of things from the same painting and we wanted to make a digital collage together. We can actually also import in different masked flowers from other paintings, and since we're making a collage of things, we can actually merge different parts of different paintings with this technique. So we'll go ahead and in a different painting, so this is again the kind of annoyed flower girl, we'll take a section of it and oh, it's so mad. Quick Select is so mad at me. We'll select and mask it. It remembers all of our settings. We'll hit new layer with layer mask, and we'll duplicate this layer into our collage piece. So we can actually save this. Let's save this as floral digital collage. And we'll take this and we can use it in different ways. Um, I heard you like collages, so I put a collage in a collage so you can collage your collages with your colleagues. Ashi asks, do you think the artists use other paintings for reference, or did it take them that long to paint the seasons changing? I think they did a mix of the two. Let me see if I can find the original. There's one that is like very popular where they talk about this. I think they probably painted it in sections over the course of time, like different references, and then reused those references in one composite still life. Oh yeah, okay, let me see if I can pull this up for you. Okay, so this is the same dude, Severin Rosen, and it says, even here, it says, such depictions of abundance are reflected the increasing availability and variety of fruit because of cultivation and transportation. So let's go in and take a look at this. What a trippy zoom. I mean, some of this could have existed at the same time. So a lot of this is more summery compared to before, so like watermelons and lemons. But a lot of this is also being imported in. So I think the window for them to paint this was decreasing in time, over time, which is great. It was good for them because then they didn't have to wait all year for things to be painted. And so it actually reflects the globalization that was coming during that time. I actually love that type of art history where people talk about why certain animals or fruit appear in paintings, and it's like partially because lines were imported into certain areas at certain times, or grapefruit didn't exist in a certain place, and so they brought it in. Okay, so we'll go back into Photoshop, and let's see if we can actually take more of this, and we'll do some more trippy collage effects. I actually really like this effect of having them be repeated because, again, it looks very artificial on our end, and that's just something they were trying to avoid. They were trying to make it look very natural, and I love just messing around with that, like making it look a little bit freaky and different. If you're gonna do a digital collage, make it weird, That's like the... we can also make this teeny tiny. One thing I'm actually noticing is, do you see this? There's like, I don't know if you can see it. There's like little edges of lines, and it's partially coming from the fact that the images are retaining that edge. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually merge all of these. So we'll duplicate this so that we can play around with it if we had to. We'll merge what's there. We'll group them to group the existing ones to hide it. So we'll call this merged layers. And then we'll change the background to be something different. Or maybe we can pick a color. And you can kind of see these. Do you see this? The edges from the masking, like where Photoshop got really confused and mad about it. We'll actually just go ahead and erase that. Selecting merge layers, and just erase those lines. This is actually why I prefer to do that trim image edges for where I like trim it down and trim away the transparent pixels and export it as an image. It's actually partially because sometimes I found that there's this artifacting that occurs and I just don't have time. I don't have time to deal with it. And if I trim down the edge, I'll know if there's like all these like little line artifacts appearing. Ta-da! This image is actually probably huge, is what I'm realizing. Like the actual full image size. So let's go ahead and see if the canvas size makes any sense. Yeah, it's like 3,000 pixels. We'll make it 1,000 in both directions. There we go. So that's it at 100%. Let's see if we can add a little more pieces of different paintings in there. And again, we're not going for realism. The master painter had already done the realism bits for us, so we don't have to be as worried about it. What we're going for is surrealism, for it to be super trippy. You can see how fast this is, right? So for those who are joining us right now, let's talk about that a little bit. One more time, we are selecting the background. We are taking our quick selection tool and clicking on an object. We are right clicking, hitting select and mask, and then we have these refinements on the right, but because we already saved them with remember settings, we can just go ahead and output to a new layer with a layer mask. And then there we have it. So we'll take these sections. And play around with them. Whoa, that one's so crazy. Just like so bright. You know what I realized? I should have had background music during this Adobe Live segment. I feel like sometimes when I'm working, I never really focus on the music, and then I realize later that other people are confused, are thinking about the music. Let's see. What else can we pull in here? Should we pull in something different? Should we pull in this nest? We don't have a nest, it's all been flowers for now. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing. Select the image, or select the layer. Quick select the background. Oh man, this is already gonna be difficult, I can tell. Select and mask. We'll erase the chunks we don't want. Come on, quick select, I believe in you. Quick select is so mad right now. It's okay. Then we'll go ahead and we'll take our brush and we'll paint out the places we don't want. See the edge here. Refine edge might do a nice job on the edges of this one. I agree. I feel like we should have refined the edges instead of me just futilely trying to paint it in. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll also take a second pass at it and just Eh. Sometimes I'll take a second pass just to see if it'll listen to me, but I don't think it will this time. Take our bird's nest. I don't know if it really fits. It's so brown. It's not really the same as the other ones. Maybe this should be. I don't know how I feel about the eggs, guys. A mouse or an elephant, a teeny tiny giraffe. Oh, that would be really cute. Should we try to find a teeny tiny giraffe? Yeah, if we're gonna go wild, we might as well make it really weird, right? All right, let's go back into the Met and look for art. And so I'll show you a little bit what I do. I'll go into the collection here and search for a giraffe. And I'll click for open access because that's always what I want to make sure to get, and artworks with image. Look at this goofy looking giraffe. Oh, this one's actually really cute. Oh, it's from a cigarette card. They used to have these things called cigarette cards where when you bought a cigarette, you could get a little card that came with it, kind of like a trading card. Let's see if we can add this guy into our Photoshops. Let's open our giraffe. Let's select something nice and yes. Look at my giraffe. Look at his legs. We'll get his tail. Perfect. Perfect. Layer. We'll paint it in the parts we do want. Smooth. Put in his little hooves. I think this is actually a good one where if we could shift the edge a little bit, we'll get a little bit more of the definition that we wanted. Okay. We won't even bother with his, his legs might be hidden in the collage. So let's go ahead and just, look at this enormous giraffe. Yes. I like how we're all losing our minds because we've been trapped inside for so long. You know, I fully embrace this kind of freaky collage requests, or unnerving collage requests. Let's take this and we'll also switch it around in size so that it flips the other way. Oh, it's awful. It's so awful. They look like dinosaurs, like paintings of dinosaurs. I don't know why. All right, It sounds like from Paul, we love the teeny tiny giraffe, so we'll go really small. I love it. What an unnerving situation. I actually think the little stacked layers of what's it called? Little stacked layers of flowers are what makes it really interesting, where they look like they're just like erupting out of nothing. Because we don't really have, it's like a level of surrealism that otherwise wouldn't exist. Let's see, let's go back and borrow that stack of marigolds. I think what we actually have to do is we need to export that marigold so that that background doesn't get all weird again. So let's take the marigold, we'll trim, file and save as marigold, and then drag it in. That will make more sense, I think. Ooh, Mustafa says, what if they are eating from the flowers as in candy clouds? I like that. They're like little hummingbirds, but giraffes. Let's see if I can make these. Even more freaky. Yes, love this little swirl of marigolds. They would never exist in real life, and that's what makes them great. Perfect. And what else can we do? So let's make them eat out of the, what's it called? The yellow tulip, I think. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing. We'll trim. And pull it in here. Boom. Giraffe eating out of this. And then what we can do with masking is that we can actually mask just the petal so that the giraffe's face is inside of the petal. So let's do it. Let's take this, layer, select and mask, and then we'll move it over the giraffe's face. Like so. Like that. Really get the impression that the giraffe is eating out of the experience. Marcia says, the repeating flowers look like little delicious cookies. Oh, yes. Who can resist, and who can amongst us could resist a good cookie? All right, we'll take the daisies and do the same thing because I think we all like the little repeating image experience. So we'll call this pink daisy. Oh, Ashi, you're very welcome. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. It's kind of fun to make stuff together. It's like a fun collaborative experience of what can we make as weird as physically possible. And I think normally, right, I think that's what's great about collage work, especially with stuff that's open access, is we are not as attached to it because it's not your baby, and you're not trying to claim that you painted it. You can be a little bit more free with it. I think we also had this little baby red. Let's call it baby red .png. Paul is asking, is the Met's online collection available as public domain? So not everything is available, but a lot of it is. So I think that's what's so great about this. Hey, did someone just call me out as the unnamed layer community? It's so real. I feel so seen and also attacked. Absolutely true that I did not name any of these. I mean, now they're just called Baby Red, copy 2, copy 3. Where should we put this red one? Should we have a support group for people who don't like to name their layers? I feel like I would be the first person who would need that. Like, if someone opens this layer later, this file later, what will they understand from this? It's just actual crazy garbage. What I will do sometimes is I won't name the layers. I'll just throw these unnamed layers into folders and then name those. That way later I can be like, yeah, that's what I meant to do. You can even see right here, I'm actually missing this marigold, which it didn't go in the right folder. Tim says, if you don't like naming your layers, try color coding them. That is a good idea, because then we can just call these red. And since it's flowers, it's maybe a little bit more, it's maybe a little bit easier. Actually, if you guys love these collages, I have something to show you, which is made in a similar style. Let me see if I can pull it up for you. So I don't know if you guys know, but there is a conference coming up that is free. So usually at Adobe, we have the 99U conference, which is about productivity and design and what it means to be a designer. And what we have here is, let me see if I can shift my face out of the way. Okay, there we go. We have the actual conference site up, and anyone can sign up. It's free, which is really great because we used to do this but these have amazing collages on the side, and they were made by our head of brand direction and brand design, Mark Brooks. He worked with an illustrator on it, but you can see all these amazing people talk. I highly, highly recommend if you have the chance to register, because it's free. Like, who doesn't love free stuff? And I think it's great because you can also see a little bit smidge of these illustrations and how it might look a little bit similar. Top cactus, bottom octopus. So anyway, little plug for the 99U conference. I'll be there. I'll be hosting some of the sessions, so I'm excited to see you if you do come. And it's free. So, love advocating for some free stuff. That's like drinking coffee when you're drunk, the precious impression of control. He's not wrong. All right, so here's what we have so far in our terrifying and totally unrestrained version of probably go down in history as the most uncoordinated Adobe Live, in which someone was like, put in giraffes. And they were like, yeah, put in giraffes. And she put in giraffes. I have no regrets. I'm proud of the work that we did together. I'm glad that we made something so right now. Almost midnight, if not. I hope you guys are proud of the work that we did together. Like, look at how weird this thing looks. Isn't it great? Let's see if we can take a few more. Perfect. Dali-esque, but without the melting. The conference is going to be online for Alexander's question. And so you can always sign up on, here, I'll send you the actual link. Hey, I can do that in the chat. Someone said to make the giraffe eat one of the cookies. Oh, guys, I'm so proud of us for making. We should make more collages as a group. Maybe I'll include it into some of my Adobe Live program or my live streaming programming for you guys to see together. Let's go ahead and paint some different colors in the back. Super big. Someone asked me how big this is. 600 megs. 100 megs. Less jarring, and multiply it. Make it nice and big. All right. Oh, and definitely not for the lighthearted, for the faint-hearted. Yeah, these are veggie swords. They kind of look like that. They're like coming out and fighting, ready to fight you for their food. I'm always on. I'm always going to be live streaming, and I'm always excited to see if you guys, what else you guys can make. Let's see if I can pull this up for you. So today, for the rest of the day, stay tuned. There's going to be more Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge with Paul schedule ahead, and I'm really excited to see what you guys make. You guys can take all of these ideas that we just did and throw them at Paul for Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge because he's ready to, he can take it. I think Paul's always really good-natured about being able to experience these things. We made something together, which maybe was the best part of this. Was after we had mastered image masking, making something as a team. Look at how terrifying this is. I mean, come on, that's cool. Thanks so much for showing up, guys. I'm excited to see what you guys do with this. Let's see. All right, and with that, I will see you guys later. Bye!